Sometimes the most haunting memories creep up on us when we least expect them. What you're about to hear is one of those stories that lingers long after the last word fades, a memory wrapped in darkness, fear, and the mysteries that dwell just beyond our psyche. Stay with me until the end, because this tale doesn't just chill you. It grabs hold of your very soul and refuses to let go. And if you find yourself captivated and craving more, then consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you never miss a story that reaches into the shadows of the ordinary and pulls you into the unknowable. I was 16 when the nightmare began. A night I didn't speak about for years, but one that still flickers alive in the corners of my mind during the quietest hours. I'm older now, with a life that's moved miles away from that cracked neighborhood, but some part of me remains chained to that house. Silent witness to the things it has seen but never explained. We grew up in a neighborhood marked by danger, a place where broken windows, graffiti gang signs sprawled on walls, and the slow, deliberate patrols of police cars made safety a myth, where gunshots became the soundtrack of the night until you stopped listening, and burglary was as common as the sunrise. Yet somehow the worst never found its way inside our walls, a fact I never could understand. Our home had no bars on the windows, no dog to warn us, no working alarm system to scare off thieves or worse. Sometimes I'd return from school to a screen door hanging open, or a window latch tampered with, but nothing ever stolen, nothing ever broken, and my mother would just brush it off, as if by ignoring the darkness, it would vanish. But that shadow never left me alone. My father was gone before I could even remember much about him, lost to a story my mother never fully told, only that he worked in some specialized field, a phrase thick with secrets, maybe a nicer way of saying he abandoned us, leaving my mother to fill both roles without ever once complaining. I watched her come home every evening with swollen feet, exhaustion hemming her every movement as she cared for me and my little brother Michael, our father's namesake, a boy whose laughter and tears both echoed with the memory of the man we barely knew, a name I refused to say aloud and instead called him Mikey in silent revolt. One night, nearly 20 years back, my mother received a call that would change everything. Without much explanation, she had to leave us for a whole week to work a contract job downstate. A sudden absence marked by taped meal plans on the fridge, spare keys stashed away, and whispered reassurances as she left before dawn, trusting me to hold the fort and protect Mikey in her place, a burden I was unprepared but determined to bear. That evening after her departure, Mikey sat on the floor scribbling in the worn pages of his notebook, humming erratically, lost inside a world only he could see. Ever since he learned to speak, he had insisted that something lived in his room, a presence not quite human, whispering and caressing his mother's hair as she slept. Mom dismissed it as imagination, turning on lights to keep the darkness at bay, but little Mikey was never convinced, the fear etched into his gaze more real than any shadow. When he quietly asked to watch a scary movie, a strange request given his usual fear of the night, I hesitated but agreed, hoping a dose of Hollywood monsters might exorcise his invisible terror. We turned on a channel playing horror films only to be interrupted by the chilling drone of an Amber Alert, a confirmed break-in just blocks away, urging neighbors to lock their doors and watch for danger. The weight of responsibility crashed down on me as I secured every lock, soon realizing that we were isolated, alone, and vulnerable to horrors that walked silently through the night. As Mikey lay in bed, the nightmare arrived. not just in his dreams, but in the form of a scream slicing through the quiet, his terror pulling me from sleep with a force I couldn't resist. I burst into his room only to find the bed empty beneath him, his eyes wide and trembling, fixated on something I couldn't see, something that should not have existed in the safe space of a child's refuge. And then I saw it, two enormous yellow eyes staring through the shadows under the bed, a creature warped by twisted limbs and dripping saliva, a face malformed yet strangely content, grinning with teeth that promised unspeakable things, frozen with fear, but fueled by the instinct to protect. I yanked Mikey from the horrors lurking beneath his bed and pulled him through the house toward the attic, our last sanctuary, pulling the ladder up behind us as the house filled with the sound of destruction. The smashing of glass, flurries of steps, and guttural growls shaking the very walls, punctuated by chairs toppling and floorboards splintering. The animalistic symphony of the intruder echoed through the frames of our broken home as Mikey hid close, clutching my shirt like a lifeline. The silence after the chaos almost worse than the noise itself. We stayed locked in the cold attic, with nothing but muffled breaths to mark the passage of time, hoping and praying that help would arrive before shadows claimed us completely. The police found us shaking and pale, led us down into a home transformed by violence, marked by shattered furniture, open cupboards spilled with the remnants of disrupted lives, and a dark smear across the floor that spoke of fear far beyond my understanding. The gun left by the broken window was evidence of a desperate fleeing man whose fate would remain a mystery, one the officers never fully unraveled, offering hollow reassurances that the call had saved us, while casting glances into dim corners that never seemed quite empty. The years since that night have done little to dim what I saw or felt, and though Mikey stopped speaking of the monster, the memory presses on, an enigma that defies explanation, a darkness that was less a curse and more a guardian, standing between us and the true evil that prowled outside, an unseen protector cloaked in fur and teeth, a creature as terrifying as it was tender, watching over my brother with a fierce and silent devotion that still chills me whenever I close my eyes and remember. This is the story of that night, a night of fear, resilience, and the strange forces that bind family beyond reason or logic, a tale that lingers long after the last word, just as it does within me.